Hi and welcome everyone. Friar Tech here. This is my epoch, and I had a subscriber ask a question and ask me to make a video on renting a room to get out of homelessness, because I've talked about it a little bit. I've talked about how I've done roommate situations. I talked about how I used to have a couple of houses, and I used to rent out by the room. So I do have some authority and some experience to be able to talk about this to a point to where I can advise you. So if you're homeless and you're thinking, and you're a single individual, okay, if you're homeless and you're a single individual and you're thinking, well, maybe I should go rent a room, pay attention to some of the advice that I give here, because it is very important, because I'm going to be able to share with you kind of both sides of the aisle. So let me talk about my experience as a landlord before I start talking about my experience as a tenant. Okay. When I had my two houses, I was renting out 7 rooms, and I had 1 room for myself. So I had 2 4-bedroom houses. Okay. The first house I was renting out $350. The other one was $400 plus a quarter of the utilities, because doing a flat rent as a landlord is, especially if you've got tenants that like to take 20-minute, 30-minute showers and all that other stuff, they don't think about it because they're paying a flat fee. And so if you have a landlord that offers a flat fee, they may, really up it. But if you're, but also as a landlord, it is much easier and much more cost effective, because as a landlord, you got to make a mortgage payment, you got to pay property taxes, you got to pay for certain other things like lawn care or whatever, if that's what you got to do as a landlord. And so that stuff costs. Okay, and so that's going to be factored into your rent, plus a little bit profit if they're a reasonable landlord. So right now, $750 to $950 for a room would be, you better be renting a nice room in a nice house, okay, in a decent area. We're talking about lower middle class. All right, if you're paying $650 to $700, or even anything under that, you're going to be living in poorer neighborhoods, poorer areas. Not necessarily the ghetto, but sometimes they can be ghetto. And plus, sometimes the cheaper the rent is, the harder the landlord is to deal with. Okay, so that was one of my things that I realized as a landlord, is that I could offer cheap rent, but that also gave me the authority to be a little bit more strict in my houses and have a higher set of expectations for my tenants. Okay, and the reason why I did that was because, one, I wanted to drop the price in the rental market, but 2, I wanted to be able to have my pick of the litter as far as when it came to people wanting a room, because I would put it up on Craigslist for $350 a month, or even $400 plus quarter utilities. I mean, everybody else was charging $750, and I was charging a little bit less, and I would have that room filled within 4 to 6 hours. Okay, because when you've got cheap rent, you could sit there and interview. So I do the phone interview. If I could connect with them on the phone, because I got to live with these people. I lived in one of the houses. Okay, so I would have them come there, and then we would meet. I would say, first, if I decide I like you, first come, first serve with money. Okay, so if you're going to do something like this, you definitely need to come with money, because you better be putting down at least the security deposit, which was like $300, which was non-refundable. It paid for repairs to the house. It paid for beautification of the house as a landlord. But I was doing something different with these houses than most landlords were doing. Okay, so that is why I was able to do that. But I also called the local homeless shelter. I said, look, if you've got people that are homeless and they're trying to get off the streets and they've got money, I will give them preferential treatment, which means I will move them to the front of the line if you call and you recommend them. But the one downside is that they didn't understand all the other complexities of this, and so I ended up getting an unmedicated bipolar that was 10 days clean, and she created havoc in my house. After that, I did not want to rent to the homeless. I called the shelter up and I chewed them up, and I told them that I was no longer giving them preferential treatment. So this was something that a bridge that they burned, because they just put my name on the list and didn't even really take the respect of, because I mean, if a landlord's willing to work with the homeless population and give them a place to rent, especially if they know that they're cheap and all this other stuff, and they know that the homeless will tolerate certain things that some, prima donnas wouldn't. Well, then, you have these people that, you can bring people in. But you still want to be selective. You don't want to have crappy tenants. You don't want to have somebody who's just been 10 days sober and they just got their Social Security check and now they're coming in, and then like within a couple of weeks they're late on rent and all that other stuff. So as a landlord, that becomes an issue. So let me share my thoughts from the tenant side. So yes, I always went and looked for cheap rent. Okay, I knew I was going to be in the ghetto. I once paid $200 a month, and we were using a gas stove as a heater. Okay, it was a roof over my head and my own personal space. $200 in East Dallas, fine, I'll do it. I mean, there was holes in the house. It was bad. It was bad, but $200, it was worth it. But the guy was also remodeling. So, when you go into that, make sure that you talk to them, see what they're doing with the house, what they plan on doing with the house. If you can meet with the tenants, kind of, see what the environment is. See, being somebody that owned a cleaning business, even before then, cleanliness in a house was very important. Sometimes I was willing to pay a little bit more to be in a cleaner house because, I don't want to be with a bunch of nasties. Okay, that's just, I don't want to be. And so I would go, and honestly, if you sit there and do it right, okay, so it's going to take, there's Sam. It's going to take about 6 weeks, okay? So it's going to take about 3 or 4 weeks for your first check. Then your second check is going to be your security deposit. And what I would always do is I would talk to the landlord. I would say, look, I'm trying to get myself off the streets. Or at one point, I'm living in my mom's basement. This is my second check. I'm going to be there for a while. Will you work a deal out with me, where I could pay, like, because you want to do it like in the middle of the month anyways, because you're going to get cheaper rent, like a prorated rent. So let's say that the security deposit's $400 and your prorated rent is, I don't know, $2. So now you got to come up with $600, which is much easier to come up with than, let's say, the $400 to $800 to maybe $1,000 it's going to cost you to fully move in. Okay, so you got to really look at it and really play your ducks in a row with everything. So when you're looking for a place, make sure you really vet the place that you're looking at. Make sure that you go on site. Don't do sight unseen. That's how I did it for $200. If I would have seen it, I would have said no. I'll look somewhere else. I'll pay a little bit more in rent, but I'm not going to pay $200 for this, because I ended up catching pneumonia and had to go back home to Oregon because my ex-wife and I at the time were trying to move from Oregon to Texas, and I was going to go down to Texas, get a job, get her to come down, and we were going to build our family in Texas where the economy was supposed to be better. And this was like 2009, 2010 when this happened. So this was something that we were looking to do. But the thing is, I've always lived in roommate situations because being a single individual, you don't really need to pay a lot for rent. You don't really need a lot of space. A bedroom, a shared kitchen, a bathroom, as long as your roommates clean up after themselves. Standard rules are, and this is something you should be looking for, is that they have to do their dishes after they're done cooking, or before they're done, or after they're done with their meal. Okay, they are not allowed. Everybody has to do their dishes, and you got to make sure that you're in a place that's pretty strict about that. If you're lackadaisical on it, like I used to be really bad about it, but being in roommate situations, I ended up learning to like, and it helps me out here, living out here on the road like I do, is because instead of waiting till the next morning to clean my pots and pans, I clean them as soon as I get done eating. I clean all my dishes, and I'm packed up and ready to go for the next morning, so that I can cook, and I don't have to do dishes just to be able to cook. Okay. And when you're out here, that plays a big part in it. But when you're in there, I mean, you got plenty of dishes and stuff like that. You don't want to let them pile up. My biggest complaint about roommates, especially when you're older, being with older roommates, the reason why they're older roommates and they're there is because they're so slobbish. No woman wants them. So be very careful when you're going into it, because the younger, if they're under 40. They're most likely still looking to date. They're still looking to start a family. They're still looking to have a woman in their life. Okay. And if they don't, then if they don't, then they're going to be slobbish. Okay. And you don't want to deal with that. Okay. So that's one thing to really worry about. Sorry guys, I got a lot of activity going on around here, but hey, you know how to help the channel? Everything's down in the description, memberships, tip jar, everything else like that. Otherwise, become a subscriber, like the video, make sure you share it with your community, and thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next video.